back to the big B-17 build. In the last video, I covered cutting the wing panels from their boxes. Full disclosure, all that footage was shot way back in February, and I'd hoped to have a lot more done before sharing that video, but then the COVID outbreak hit. Now, I am very fortunate to have a job where I can work full-time remotely, but with all the extra effort required at work and adjusting to life full-time at home with a 3-year-old, this project has rightly taken a back seat to other priorities. All of that being said, projects like this offer a much needed distraction, can help keep you sane, so I've been trying to find more time recently to keep pushing forward on the Sweet Pea. I mentioned in the last video that I needed to get the central section of the wing finished to the point where I can join it to the fuselage before I can get the fuselage to the point that it's ready for fiberglass. So that's what I'm going to be working on today. When I planned the layout for my wing boxes, I included 3 sections of foam that I plan to remove and replace with plywood. You can see those pieces here, here, and here. Now the forward spar runs the full length of the central wing section, and it's paired with this doubler sandwiching a foam core to make the main spar. The doubler and foam core are shorter to save weight, and they only run to the outer edge of the outboard nacelle. I had planned for my aft spar to be as far back in the wing as possible while still being the full height of the wing, and as long as it didn't interfere with the flaps. Now, I've since changed my mind and I've opted to place it in line with former F6 here in the fuselage, and that's going to make the wing attachment a lot easier, but I will have to make the spar slightly thinner at the tip so that it doesn't interfere with the flap operation. I'll leave the foam spar that I intended to remove, I'll leave that in place. And along with the carbon fiber stringers that I had added, the balsa sheeting, and the fiberglass, I think these wing panels are going to be incredibly strong. The plans I'm using for reference assume that you would make the full wings separate and removable, so I had to make some adjustments to design these spars. I used some tape to mark out the dihedral on the shop floor, and then I laid out the 1/4-inch plywood sections and lined up my fuselage templates with the center point. Using a long straight edge, I extended out from the templates to the dihedral marks. This gave me the lower line for the spar. I then used the height of the wing panel at the outermost point to set the height of the top line and finished drawing out the part. Once the spars were drawn out, I clamped and weighted down the material to the bench, and I cut the spars out with a jigsaw. I was careful with my cuts, and when I was done, only a little cleanup was needed. I cut the sections slightly longer than necessary, and I'll trim back so that the fit is perfect. The portion of the former that extends up into the fuselage will need to be adjusted to account for the 6mm foam sheeting that's inside the fuse. And once I'm happy with that fit, I will cut off cleanly this top section and I'll secure that in the fuselage. I'll then be able to use these matching plates to secure the wing attachment bolts, and I'm currently planning on using 4. I think 4 bolts plus the centering pins that'll eventually help mate the wing to the fuselage, that should be strong enough to join the wing and fuse. So I think that's enough talk. Let's start installing these spars. I started off by attaching the forward spar to the lower central section of the fuselage. This section had been carefully hot wire cut from the fuselage and will ensure that everything lines up. I was very careful to ensure that the spar was centered, and after clamping the spar to the foam former, I made sure it was level and then measured the height of each spar at the tip. When I was happy, I let the glue cure out and I started prepping the left panel for installation. I pulled the removable foam section out and then carefully cut the pink foam to allow the spar to run from tip to tip. You can see how I had used tape to secure the panel back into the wing box to ensure that nothing shifted. When I was happy with the slot, I did a test fit, marked the areas to be glued, added the glue, and then reinstalled. You'll notice I'm using more tape here for clamping pressure, along with the upper wing box and a few weights to hold everything in place while the glue cured. Then I repeated the process for the right panel. With the forward spar in place, I cut out the foam spacer for the secondary main spar and secured that former. This was clamped in place while the glue set up. Once the forward formers were fully set up, I started working out the aft spar. This required some small modifications to my initial plans, but the changes were minor and everything worked out well. Again, I secured the panels into the beds with tape before cutting in the slots for the spar so that nothing would shift on me. I then added the glue and installed the spar. One thing that isn't pictured well here, in each of these steps I'm using tape as a barrier layer to ensure that when the glue expands or settles, it doesn't glue the panel back into the box. That would be really annoying. Once the spar had set up, I went back and re-glued any of the former sections that had come loose. With all the glue fully cured, I removed the panels from their boxes, removed the excess tape, cleaned up a bit of excess glue, and then weighed the central section. Currently, the center section is about 4.5 pounds. I'm pretty happy with that, particularly when you consider how large the sweet pea will be and how much weight these spars will need to hold up to. All right, that's where the center section sits today. So far, this build method is working out great, even at this large of a scale. In the next video, I'll work out a bit more of the internal structure, I'll get the wing retention bolts added, and then I'll get this section mated up to the fuselage. After that, there's going to be a lot of tinkering to get everything installed. Remember, this section houses the main gear, the flaps, the nacelles with motors, speed controllers, and batteries, a 4-speaker sound system, and of course the bomb bay doors and bomb drop mechanism. So that's a lot to get crammed in here, but I can't wait. So until next time, thanks for watching.